Held in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news at 6 comes to you with the compliments of Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC. With the news at this time, I'm Dennis Chabrol. Good evening. First, the highlights. The opposition may go to court for government spending from the contingency fund. The chief elections officer says local government elections can be held next year. An East Coast Demerara bus conductor was stabbed to death today. Regionally, more than 100 passengers aboard a Caribbean Airlines flight had been delayed for 30 hours after a passenger died aboard. Internationally, Washington has announced sanctions after a Chinese-made painkiller has killed thousands of people in the United States. The details of these and other stories in a moment.
Is it a special occasion? Are you on a budget but still want a filling and also mouth-watering meal? Look no further. KFC is here for you at 9 locations and 6 drive-thrus, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence, which now delivers from Shore Base to Little Diamond. Call 632-0533, 6080162, or 503-3591. KFC.
It's finger-licking good.
And now the news in detail. Opposition leader Joseph Harman says here's a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, APNU-AFC, is considering taking the government to court for spending monies from the Treasury illegally. He says based on a number of financial papers tabled in the National Assembly for consideration on Thursday, the government has spent billions of dollars for reasons that are not unforeseen, not urgent, and not an emergency. These include direct cash grants to flood-affected farmers and retrenched sugar workers.
Only yesterday we had a full debate, a full discussion on this matter, and that the attorneys that are on the team itself, they are basically looking at what actions can be taken and to provide us with an opinion. But it's in their opinion that there is a clear possibility that that action can be taken once the exercise of this discretion is tainted by improper purpose.
Opposition leader Joseph Harman. The European Union sees the need for closer political relations with oil-rich Guyana. Deputy Managing Director for America's European External Action Service, Mr. Javier Nino Perez, was yesterday speaking at the joint news conference with President Irfan Ali.
We want to be able to talk to Guyana about absolutely everything that is of mutual interest and concern. Whether this is the regional situation, whether it's a specific foreign policy issue, where is this how to work together in the multilateral forum, where is it how to fight together to promote our societal model. This is a real challenge for the next few years. How to make sure that we're in a place after those 7 years where we can say to each other, this is how partners, this is how friends talk to each other about everything that is of mutual interest of concern. And I think this is the challenge we have to give to one another.
President Ali hints that future relations between Guyana and the European Union will focus on a range of matters related to the Caribbean.
It is not only about budget support and future programming of resources. It is much more than that now. The new dimension of the relationship is much, much more than that. Deal from governance and you notice Mr. Perez is not shy away from mentioning that what we are creating is a political partnership. And that's important for us to understand, because a political partnership, that is not language you hear from international organizations very often. But there is tremendous strength when an organization say we are looking to build political partnership.
President Ali hints that future relations between Guyana and the European Union will focus on a range of matters related to the Caribbean. For several decades, the European Union has been funding a variety of infrastructural projects and the sugar industry. Chief Election Officer of the Guyana Elections Commission, Vishnu Prasad, says that local government elections can be held next year. Elections for neighborhood and town councils across Guyana should have been held this year. But Mr. Prasad says those elections can be held in 2022.
1 year's time is more than enough to prepare for and hold local government elections.
But the prolonged delay in removing Keith Lowenfield and Roxanne Myers as Chief and Deputy Chief Election Officer, as well as appointing Mr. Prasad, have contributed to the delay in making arrangements for local government elections. JCOM Chairman retired Justice Claudette Singh had told the government that the absence of a Chief Election Officer would have made it impossible to hold those polls this year. Trinidad and Tobago says it is ready to assist Guyana in building its gas-to-shore pipeline. Energy Minister Stuart Young told a news conference that he recently held informal discussions with Guyana's Natural Resources Minister Vikram Barrett about the construction of the more than 200-kilometer-long pipeline from the Liza 1 well to Wales, West Magda-Marara.
There has been some kind of gas, associated gas, as I understand it, and I was speaking to the minister from Guyana, he was sitting next to me in Houston. What they're looking to do is bring some of that gas to shore, but it's going to be hundreds of kilometers of pipeline for domestic electricity production and small manufacturing. We are available to assist. We have the expertise, the services, the knowledge of how to do this. We've been doing it for decades. We were recognized as one of the leading gas producers in the world, so of course that is available.
The gas-to-energy project is expected to cost almost $1 billion. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony's is welcoming the manufacture of another tablet to treat COVID-19 infected persons. He says the tablet Paxlovid, made by Pfizer, is yet to be approved by the United States Food and Drug Administration.
What it also shows in this particular study is that for patients using Paxlovid, they had a lower viral load. And if your viral load is quite low, then it prevents transmission of the disease. So that's a good development as well. So Paxlovid is yet to be approved by the US FDA, but certainly once it becomes approved by the US FDA, other countries would be looking to secure and to get these tablets as part of the arsenal against COVID-19.
Merck has also manufactured tablets, but recent reports are that they are not as effective as they had initially been told. Meanwhile, the health minister has ruled out the Guyana government getting involved in the costly and complex manufacture of COVID vaccines. At the same time, he says that major vaccine makers have struck deals with companies in South America, and so sufficient vaccines should be available to Guyana. A minibus conductor was earlier today stabbed to death, and the police have since issued a wanted bulletin for the suspected assailant. Dead is Marvin Nurse of Haslington, East Coast of Marara. Later Wednesday afternoon, police issued a wanted bulletin for the prime suspect, identified as Paul Jr. Lynch. He is 27 years old, and his last known address is 127 Bachelor's Adventure, East Coast of Marara. Mr. Lynch allegedly stabbed to death Nurse at the Route 44 minibus park, Commerce Street, Georgetown. Police say that they were pelting each other with broken bottles and bricks. Eventually, their disagreement escalated, and Mr. Lynch allegedly stabbed the Nurse with a knife to his left side chest. The victim ran a short distance before falling to the ground, while the suspect escaped in a minibus. Police say that Nurse was picked up and taken to the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation, where he was pronounced dead while undergoing surgery. In the Caribbean, 2 business chambers in Trinidad and Tobago are recommending the creation of more COVID-19 safe zones. We get the details from TTA News Online.
The business community continues to be concerned about the impact of COVID-19. This from AmChan TNT, the Energy Chamber, and the TNT Chamber of Industry and Commerce. The groups have put forward additional recommendations to government to aid in curbing the spread of the virus. In a joint statement, the groups say unfortunately the virus continues to spread and are therefore calling for other measures to be taken. Among those, the joint chambers are recommending that government put in place legal clarity to allow businesses to make their business places safe zones. It suggested that in both the public and private sectors who do not have a medical reason not to be must be vaccinated. There was also an additional recommendation to make all public buildings safe zones. The joint chambers say Trinidad and Tobago is in a crisis with regard to the continued rapid spread of the COVID-19 pandemic and is hopeful government acts on the recommendations soon.
That report by TT News Online. Antigua and Barbuda's national revenue is rebounding. The country's economy suffered a devastating blow because COVID-19 had caused a drastic reduction in tourists by air and sea. At one stage, the Antigua and Barbuda government had delayed the payment of salaries and pensions on a monthly basis because there had been very little money in the treasury. But as we hear in this report from the Antigua Broadcasting Service, revenue from the Antigua and Barbuda sales tax ABST is also showing an impressive increase.
Acting Commissioner of the Inland Revenue Department, Jermaine Jarvis, says the hotel sector accounts for most of the revenue loss that was seen in 2020.
And when you close down the hotels, you not only lose the hotel accommodation revenue, but also the hotels consume to provide food and other amenities for their guests.
He explains one of the clear indicators of aggregate demand and how this impacts on tax collections.
When we look at our measure of consumption, which is the ABST, we are only just about 2 million short of our collections in 2019.
Jarvis says there is evidence of a rebound this year.
Revenue collections compared to the year 2019, which we'll use as a base year, up until November of 2021, we're actually seeing a 2% increase in collections at the Inland Revenue Department.
The acting commissioner says the real estate sector is driving the rebound.
You have the stamp duty that is performing well, and you also have the property tax that's performing incredibly as well. We are only maybe about 200,000 short of our collection baseline of 2019.
Jarvis says an increase in revenues in all areas is projected for 2022, anticipating it to be a very good year for the IRD. Sherilyn Beezer reporting for ABS News.
Scores of passengers aboard a Caribbean Airlines flight from Miami to Puerto Trinidad on Monday were left stranded for 30 hours in Puerto Rico. This after an emergency landing there due to the death of a passenger. The flight had 146 passengers on board. CAL's flight BW483 was en route to Puerto International Airport when about halfway through its journey, around 6 p.m. on Monday, it landed in Puerto Rico after flight stewards alerted the captain of the medical emergency in which the passenger died. Guardian Media was also told that it was not until 8:15 p.m. that passengers and crew members were allowed to disembark the plane, and more than 10 hours before they got an update. CAL did not disclose what happened to the aircraft to prevent the passengers from traveling on to Trinidad, but said in a statement yesterday morning that another aircraft was sent to relieve the passengers by midnight Monday. However, that aircraft was also unable to leave due to circumstances outside of the airline's control. With every hour that passed, tensions rose among passengers who flooded the counter for answers on when they'll be back in the air and on their way to their destination. Now we go to the BBC World Service for the latest bulletin of international news.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. Germany is expelling 2 Russian diplomats after a court found that a Russian man had murdered a former Chechen rebel commander in Berlin on the orders of the Russian state. Germany's foreign minister called the killing 2 years ago a grave breach of German sovereignty. Damien McGuinness is in Berlin.
Moscow denies involvement in the killing, and the Russian ambassador to Berlin says the verdict was biased and politically motivated. He said it would aggravate the already difficult relations between Moscow and Berlin. On the one hand, Germany feels that their sovereignty is being called into question by a contract killing carried out on German soil, not far from the German parliament. On the other hand, Russia says, well, it's nothing to do with us. This was a lone actor, and the man being killed was a terrorist anyway. So two very different official views here. What is clear is that this will definitely have an impact on ties between Russia and Germany.
Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said it's absolutely vital that people get booster jabs against coronavirus, speaking as the country registered its worst daily figure for infections since the start of the pandemic. 78,000 new cases have been recorded, with the spread of the Omicron variant causing considerable concern. England's Chief Medical Officer, Professor Chris Whitty, called the variant a really serious threat.
How big a threat? There are several things we don't know, but all the things that we do know are bad. And the principal one being the speed at which this is moving. It is moving at an absolutely phenomenal pace, and therefore between the time that it first starts to really take off in a way people will be able to see and the point when we get to very, very, very large numbers will be quite a short one.
The United Nations says Colombia's security forces committed serious human rights violations earlier this year when a wave of protests left dozens of people dead. The UN High Commission for Human Rights said the police had used unnecessary or disproportionate force during the demonstrations. It said 44 civilians died during the protests and that the security forces had been involved in at least 28 of the deaths. The US President Joe Biden has been inspecting the devastation caused by tornadoes in the state of Kentucky on Friday. At least 74 people died in Kentucky and 14 others elsewhere when the tornadoes turned several towns into piles of debris. Nomia Iqbal reports.
President Biden assessed the damage in Mayfield from a helicopter. Most of the town has been flattened. He said he was struck by how communities have come together to help each other. He's already authorised funds to be given to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to provide important resources such as food, water and teams to help rebuild homes. The President emphasised that support from the government wouldn't just be for today, but for months to come.
BBC News. Washington has announced sanctions on 4 Chinese chemical companies and a Chinese man in connection with the painkiller addiction killing thousands of people in the US. A government official said many of the precursors to synthetic opioids originated in China. The State Department said the sanctions would disrupt the global supply chain and the financial networks that enable synthetic opioids and precursor chemicals to reach the country. The former Minneapolis police officer, Derek Chauvin, has pleaded guilty in a US federal court to violating the civil rights of the African-American man, George Floyd. He's currently serving a 22-and-a-half-year jail sentence for Mr. Floyd's murder and had previously pleaded not guilty to this charge. George Floyd's nephew, Brandon Williams, gave his reaction to the guilty plea.
Hearing him accept accountability was nice, but I didn't feel a thing. Today he had a chance to blow kisses and give air hugs to his family. We can't do that to our loved one who's not here. So I don't feel a thing. I don't expect an apology, and I don't honestly care to have one.
Mass COVID vaccination drives in the Philippines have been put on hold as the country braces itself for one of the biggest typhoons of the year. The UN's humanitarian agency said almost 16 million people live in the region that's expected to be hit by Typhoon Rai, with almost 4 million living below the poverty line. It said areas in the storm's path are at high risk of landslides and flash flooding. The influential black feminist known as Bell Hooks has died at the age of 69. The author, professor, poet and activist, whose real name was Gloria Jean Watkins, wrote some 40 books, starting with a book of poems in 1978. Her first major work, Ain't I a Woman, was published in 1981 and became widely recognised as an important feminist text. BBC News.
That's the news to the moment.
On the go and need to grab a quick bite, but tired of the same dreary food? Well, KFC is here to brighten your day with a delicious, mouth-watering meal with their 9 convenient locations: Movie Town, Vlisingen Road, Mandela Avenue, Regent Street, Stavrook, Hink Street, Reading Hoop, Parika, and the Amazonia Mall, now open from 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. And they're there to welcome you every day. KFC.
It's finger licking good.
And now for a recap of the highlights. The opposition may go to court for government spending from the contingency fund. The chief election officer says local government elections can be held next year. An East Coast Demerara bus conductor was stabbed to death today. More than 100 aboard a Caribbean Airlines flight had been delayed for 30 hours after one of them died. Washington has announced sanctions after a Chinese-made painkiller has killed thousands of people in the United States. The news came to you with the compliments of Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.
You're still with News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM. Coming up in a short while, we'll be joining the BBC World Service.
Giftland Mall, they're giving away vouchers from December 30 to Christmas Eve. You can say there's no such thing as Santa, but as for we on 103, we believe.
From December 13 to 24, listen to News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM.
Answer a simple question and you can win yourself a voucher. Compliments of Giftland Mall.
Season's greetings to supporters of Giftland
and 103.1 FM.
And now over to the BBC World Service for the remainder of the evening as we bring you great features, interesting news, and of course, lots of
in the German Bundesliga, Borussia Dortmund have closed the gap on the leaders Bayern Munich back to 6 points, thanks to a 3-0 win attempt at the bottom club.